All right, thank you everybody for coming to the May 1st annual budget meeting. Now I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, and if you'll stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
One in the corner.
There's one over in the corner. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is Rhodes all day.
Thank you. At this time, I will call for a nomination for the moderator.
So moved.
Okay. Make a motion to appoint Brian McDermott as moderator for tonight's event. Second? Yep. All in favor? Aye. Take it away, Brian.
It's a good thing I'm standing here. I was getting kind of worried. Or maybe relieved. I don't know. Welcome, everybody, to our 2023 public meeting for our annual budget. It's a pleasure for me to be here tonight, and my job will be very limited, only to take and be able to facilitate answering questions or people coming to the mics. When we do have public question and answer period, I would ask people to come to the two microphones on either side of the room. We'll try to acknowledge everybody for a first round. If anybody wants to come back for a second time to speak, we would ask that everybody else goes first. So I'll try to keep tabs of that as well. We want to keep everybody to about 2 to 3 minutes of your comments, and I will try to curtail that a little bit if needed going forward. I would like to welcome our Board of Finance Chairwoman, Kathy Schalzert, for her presentation.
Thank you, Brian. The Board of Finance has approved the following resolution, which I am going to read. Shall the annual town budget in the amount of $110,096,541, as recommended by the Board of Finance for the fiscal year commencing July 1, 2023, be approved? I move the adoption of that motion.
Is there a second? Second's been made. So we'll have further discussion from Ms. Schalzert to make her full presentation.
Excuse me. All right. Okay. Next slide, please. So the Board of Finance is charged with balancing the requested amount of spending for services with the level of revenues required to pay for these services. The $110,096,541 proposed budget for 2024, the fiscal year, would require a 2.25% mill rate increase. The mill rate for real estate and personal property would increase from 34.61 to 35.39 mills. The mill rate for motor vehicles would remain at 32.46. The Board of Finance considers a number of factors in determining the budget. Key to that is input from the Town Council, which adopts the budget prior to our consideration of it, and also the Board of Education. They adopt their portion of the budget. Interaction with residents, public hearing comments. Not listed here is emails. When people email us, we do try to take that into consideration, even if we don't respond right away. Estimates of revenue sources and projections, future borrowing requirements, and voting history. The budget summary. As you can see, the adopted budget represents an increase of $1.4 million on the municipal side. For the Board of Ed, it's 2.3, almost $2.4 million. The overall increase is stated at the bottom as 3.62%. It's important to point out that, and I'm sure that Dr. Carnamola will say this when she speaks, is that we start out with a higher number, and we do work very hard to make sure that we're not increasing the budget by more than we need to. We didn't increase anything, and we also didn't have to reduce any spending, cut any spending, because we were able to identify additional sources of revenue this year, which was really fortunate for us. Next slide, please. The non-tax revenue portion of the budget consists of $15,109,119, representing 13.72% of the budget. Taxes and assessments form the bulk of the budget at 86.28%. Next slide, please. New money raised by the grand list was consistent with the prior year, 0.78%, amounting to $689,000 and $689,327. Next slide, please. The grand list changes shown here indicate positive growth except for the reval year of 19, that may not be a reval year, but except for fiscal year 1920. Next slide, please. Mill rate comparison. I think that chart really speaks for itself. Next slide, please. The recommended budget summary is pretty much the same slide that we saw earlier, just a different way of saying it. You can see the different components: the town operating budget, the Board of Education operating budget, the debt service, capital improvement, and then the sewer funds are, there's an asterisk because those funds come from user fees. Finally, the last step in the budget after this evening is the referendum on the budget, which will be on Wednesday, May 10th, from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the Senior Center. Residents have commented in the past about the requirement of 9% in order for the vote to count. I think it's important to keep in mind that the budget is presumed to be a good budget unless you come out and tell us that it isn't. So if you're not going to come to vote, you don't have anything to complain about in a sense, but the idea is not to have a small percentage of people show up and overturn the budget. If you think about it, we wouldn't really even have a referendum if we made a complete change from a council manager form of government. It's really a vestige from the town meeting form of government. In many towns, the opposite is what's required. You have to get a petition and probably get 9% or higher of the voters to put the measure on a ballot. So it's really a privilege to be able to vote on the budget, and I hope that folks who are happy or not happy, just come out and vote, show your support for the budget so that we can know that we're doing the right thing. Thank you.
I apologize that I wanted to make a comment before this had started that I was supposed to read something for the record, that according to the town charter, the budget will be submitted to a vote at a referendum on Wednesday, May 10th, 2023 at the Avon Senior Center in the Community Room, 635 West Avon Road, Avon, Connecticut, between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. There is the motion before us that Kathy made and was seconded, and Kathy made some discussion on that. And as we will now move on to the town council presentation by our chairman, Mr. Paul Hamas.
Thank you, Brian. Good evening, everybody. It's great to see you all here. Thanks for coming out. First of all, I'd like to introduce my fellow members of the Town Council who have worked so hard on this. We have Heather McGuire, Barb Osiello, Anthony Weber, and Jason Indomenico. I know we as a council, we always aim to be representative of the community's wishes. Having you all here to participate is just invaluable to the process. We appreciate you taking the time to do so. There's other people who have contributed countless hours to the development of this budget. That includes Brandon Robertson, the town manager, Grace Chiesi, the assistant town manager somewhere, and also Tom DeStasio, the director of finance. So all of them are instrumental in helping us get this budget together. We're lucky to have all of them working for us here in Avon. Next slide. So, this is our mission statement. At the very base of our process, the mission remains the same. It's to provide quality town services at a reasonable town cost, at a reasonable cost to all of our citizens and our taxpayers. Next slide. This is the budget summary. This is the total proposed budget for fiscal year 24. The Board of Education will speak separately to their funding request. So not including the operating budget of the Board of Education, the town, sewer capital, and debt service budgets total $41.2 million. This equates to an increase of $1.46 million, or 3.7% over the current year budget of $39.7 million. The increase to the town operating budget, not including the sewers, capital, and debt service budgets, is 5.08%, or $1.44 million. Costs related to the sewers are funded by separate fees or assessments, and we'll break this down in the next few slides. So, if we exclude the Board of Education's operating budget, the top three activities funded by the town's operating budget are public safety, public works, and what we call general government. Public safety is, police, the Avon Volunteer Fire Department, the water company actually charges us for fire hydrant rentals as part of the public safety budget. These services encompass about 35% of our operating budget. We also have public works. This is public works administration, roadways, machinery, equipment, buildings and grounds. This is about 20% of our operating budget. And then we also have general government. This is our town manager, the finance, assessment, revenue collection, and information technology, which is 11% of our town operating budget. So our key objectives on the council as we reviewed and developed the fiscal year 24 operating and capital budgets were to maintain the capital budget funding levels. The emphasis here is on road improvements, as well as municipal buildings and grounds and school facilities. This includes a general fund capital budget increase of $330,000 year over year. There's a $456,000 budget for road improvements in this budget. The capital budget for education facilities is $915,000 and includes funding for projects requested by the Board of Education, including an emergency generator at AMS, and a fire alarm and notification system at Pine Grove. We'll see more detail on the capital in the next slide. Our next objective is to sufficiently fund our long-term liabilities. Our defined benefit plans were closed to new employees in '97. This proposed budget provides 100% of the annual required contribution for these plans to be funded. We're also budgeting $1.8 million for other post-employment benefits, or OPEB, which covers a portion of the actuarially determined contribution for pre-fund for future retiree health care costs, as well as a contribution for current retiree health care costs. And third, our final strategic objective is ensuring that we properly fund our core services. We continue to focus on delivering high-quality core government services with a focus on public safety. We continue to contract with private vendors where efficient and effective. Some of these services include street sweeping, grounds maintenance, janitorial services, IT services, catch basin cleaning, snow removal for various town properties, and field irrigation maintenance. Here are the main budget drivers for this year. As I mentioned earlier, the town, sewer, capital, and debt service budgets have a proposed total increase of $1.4 million, or 3.7%. The operating budget consists of three categories: personal services, services and supplies, and capital outlay. Personal services and wages comprise about 75% of the town's operating budget. The town of Avon is a service organization, so it shouldn't be any surprise that the primary budget driver is people. The increase in wages and salaries is $653,000. The cost drivers include the addition of a full-time IT specialist, funding of a previous but unfunded position in the police department, 50% of the wages and benefits for a second SRO The other 50% will come from the Board of Ed. We also have an increase in medical insurance in the order of $209,000. This includes medical insurance waivers, and HSA employer contributions. There's also a proposed increase in retiree health for $99,000 and an increase in defined contributions for $64,000, $64,386. Next slide, please. For our capital budget this year, the total capital budget is $4.56 million. Items with a minimum value of $20,000 and a useful life of more than 5 years are included in the capital budget. The general fund capital budget for all funds has increased by $330,000 as compared to last year. Highlights include $915,000 for Board of Ed projects. As mentioned before, the big items here are about $250,000 for each for the Avon High School partial roof replacement, the middle school emergency generator, the Pine Grove School notification alarm systems, and several security upgrades throughout the district. We have $500,000 for an additional plow truck and a replacement plow truck in the Highway Division. We have $456,000 for road improvements. Juniper, Harris, and Burnham are on the list for this year. We have $375,000 for the acquisition of 645 West Avon Road, which will be discussed at this coming Thursday's council meeting. We have $350,000 for the design of the east-west section of Old Farms Road, $300,000 for the replacement of the Tillotson Road Bridge, $219,000 for the improvements to the police department, including the replacement of the interior locks and the replacement of their AC, $200,000 to fund the design work required for the improvements to the volunteer fire department facilities, $150,000 for the replacement of the fire department's self-contained breathing apparatus compressor, and $140,000 for the replacement of 2 police vehicles. Next slide, please. So we do offer income-limited tax relief for seniors and veterans. If you think you might qualify, please reach out to the assessor's office. They'll help you work through it. Next slide. These are our tax relief income limits. I think the purpose of this slide is to show you we're pretty much in line with our neighbors. We do review this regularly. Next slide, please. So again, here's a recap of the overall picture. As I mentioned at previous budget meetings in this cycle, I think it's fair to classify this budget as a maintenance budget. There's been incredible inflationary pressures in our economy recently. The inflation rate's been anywhere from 6 to 7% for the past 2.5 years. The town is subject to this inflation as well, but we're doing what we can to maintain and improve the services while keeping us on solid financial footing. Next slide, please. So if you want to get more up-to-date information, go ahead and visit the website, www.avonct.gov. We're also on Facebook, and sign up to receive email alerts of upcoming meetings and events here in Avon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. I'd like to call up the Chairwoman of the Board of Education, Deborah Shute.
Good evening, everyone. It's my honor and privilege to be able to introduce to you my fellow board members. I am Deb Shute, I am the chair. We also have Thage Singh, our vice chair, Jeffrey Fleischman, our secretary, Jackie Blea, Laura Young, Lynn Katz, Liz Summercorn, Sarah Thompson, and Nicole Russo. Our district works incredibly hard to make sure that we can bring to the students and our staff what we feel that they have earned by coming to Avon and why most families choose to move to our town. And so we hope that you'll be proud of the work that's been done. And it's been led through Susan Russo, our business manager, and also our head of the district is Dr. Carnamola, our superintendent. And I'll invite her forward to be able to talk through the slides with you.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Shute. I will give an overview of the presentation from the previous meeting, although in less detail tonight. I know we can always answer additional questions. We start everything in the district basing it on our mission, including our budget. And as we worked through this budget, we stopped, as we do every year, to think again about what our accomplishments are from the prior year. We like to think of it as what the investment, the next slide, I'm sorry, Tom, what the investment is that we are making, and these are just some big picture pieces of what we accomplished last year in the school district. And obviously that could have been pages and pages, but some of the things that we're most proud of that coincided with our mission. Next slide, please, Tom, thank you. You'll notice that our numbers are a little bit different than what you saw on the town side. That is for two reasons. One is an adjustment related to the revenue that came in after this budget was finalized by us and presentation put together. So I believe you saw 3.58 on the town slide for the grossed up amount. And on our side, our net at the point of finalizing the budget at least was 2.86. Next slide, please, Tom. Thank you. Our budget process is a cyclical process, and we already, having not even finished this budget going through the referendum, have started working on next year's budget, for example. When we first begin in the fall to do the primary pieces of the budget in September, so this coming September, in other words, we would be starting to put the budget together again on paper for the 24-25 school year. This is what it looks like for us back at the beginning of this year. We identify what the priorities will be. We tie them back to what is called our Blueprint for Excellence, our strategic plan that is voted on by both the Board of Education and worked on by the district's faculty, staff, and administration. We complete this process through the board first. The board adopted this budget on January 17th. And then obviously we presented at the town budget workshop on the 4th. And we are here tonight on May 1st, the town meeting. We have a huge strategic plan that I could never put on a screen and would try very hard not to print out very often the number of pages that it is. But the 4 overarching goals that we have, our Blueprint for Excellence focus areas, as we call them, are student learning, personal growth and relationships, communication and partnerships, and of course systems. The budget is a large piece of the systems in the district, obviously, and one that we try to live this particular goal of maximizing efficiencies and optimizing resources, because we define resources, of course, as human resources, financial resources, and student resources. So our goals this year, big picture budget goals, were to, first of all, continue making progress toward our overarching strategic goals, to maintain the current program we have to meet student needs, and also to continue to prepare a responsible, fiscally responsible budget that would make use of all the grant funding that we can seek out and are entitled to, but also in doing so not creating a fiscal cliff. And I think you've heard probably quite a bit about that, both in the state and nationwide, in part as a result of ARP and ESSER funds. We have worked for the last 2 years to be sure that we were working pieces we knew would be permanent for us into our permanent budget versus relying only on the federal or the state funds that we knew would run out. So tonight when I speak a bit about the grant funding, know that I will point out when we are adding something in or taking something out that's not impacted by local tax dollars, but I still think it's important that we are clear about how we are utilizing grant funds to continue moving forward without impacting local tax dollars. So this is an example of general budget funding, meaning funded by local tax dollars and revenue, not federal and state grant funds. These are all related to student learning, our focus area 1, of course. We are in the business, as I say, of teaching and learning. We have increased our STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and actually I would say STEAM, and put art into there also at this point, offerings at the high school and the middle school. That is consistent with both state requirements for updated graduation requirements and also the number of students taking those courses as they are moving forward into college and career paths that need them. So one of the things that you see in this budget is an addition of a technology education teacher. This is something that we looked at adding in for the last several years and put off until this year, frankly. And at this point, with the number of students taking the courses, we continue to pay existing staff to teach extra courses on top of their contractual load. So we knew this was the year to move that forward and work to get a full-time teacher instead of paying for additional sections. We were able to open up those offerings, and as you can see, not at the cost of a full salary based on the current budget. A math specialist, we have worked with math tutors and teaching assistants for years here at the high school, and we have not been able to have any staffing for that in the last 2 years at the middle school, just based upon hiring and the numbers of students and the space for it. So this is also reflected in this budget, a certified math specialist to work directly with students. The theater arts position is one that we already have in district. We had a .6 position. Actually, that person recently took a job full-time in another district after many years of hoping that we would eventually be able to offer a full-time position, which we have in the coming year budget. And that would bring us from a .6 to a 1.0, in other words, a full-time employee, which gains us 2 more sections able to be taught at the middle school. A huge difference for us when we're not paying for travel time and mileage only between the 2 schools, but rather getting a full-time, true full-time employee to be able to teach at both schools versus the way we have it now. 3 paraeducators. These are rolling forward into the 23-24 budget, but we actually had to add them in the year that we are living in now. After the budget was passed, we had to move around grant funding and some other line item transfers to be able to meet student needs, but we know they will continue into the coming year, so we have left them in this budget. If we had not made any of the changes or the cuts we made elsewhere, as I think you heard Ms. Salkert say, we started off with a much higher number if we were to just roll forward, but we work at a zero-based budget approach, and we did go back through every line item in this budget and zero out and start over. We started out somewhere around a 7% increase before we were able to do that and come back down to, as you saw, our gross of 3.58 or our net of 2.58, excuse me. And we would have started with a $355,386 increase with what you see on the screen. But after we reallocated funds, capitalized on some retirements that we did not have to rehire for or were able to hire at a lower rate, we are down to this netting $20,514 on this budget. IDEA grant funding is federal grant funding for students with disabilities, and this is an example of funding these positions through grant funds, not local tax dollars. But I bring them up because, one, as I said, I think it's important to note how we are spending our money to the best of our ability to do what students need, and an additional pre-K section and the related paraeducators that have to go with that teaching section were added again in the 21-22 school year 2 years ago based on the number of pre-K enrollments that we had, and we've maintained them in the current year, the 22-23 year, and we will continue to maintain that extra section of pre-K as we move forward into the 23-24 year. So that we will pay for from our IDEA grant at $143,994. Again, back to the general budget, we have added in a school resource officer. We have one in the district already. We work closely with the Avon Police Department to be able to work a second position in. Our first SRO costs the Board of Education nothing in the current budget. It hasn't since the SRO was returned to us in 2018. And moving forward, adding the second in is costing the Board of Ed side 50% of salary and benefits, and the town side 50% of salary and benefits. So we will utilize the school resource officer while school is in session, but he or she will be a full-time Avon police officer that still works on the town side summers and when we are closed here in the school district. This is another example of something that we did provide for in previous budgets, knowing that we were going to need to maintain it for the long run. The ESSER grant allowed us to fund an additional school counselor here at the high school. That was added in the 21-22 year, and we utilized grant funding for that in both that year and this year, knowing that it would run out after 2 years. However, we also knew when we added it in, we would need it permanently, and so we've made adjustments to fund it out of the local budget. Likewise, we added a safety and security specialist here at the high school, and we did that on what I would call a swing shift, so that we have coverage here at the end of the school day. So this position is a 9 to 5 position. We already have that in place this school year, although right now the position had been empty by way of someone taking a job in another district and the person from here transferring down to the middle school. So we are actually in the process, once again, of hiring a replacement. However, this position has served us very well, and we are going to maintain it in the 22-23 school year. However, the grant funding was only able to be used for 1 year, the current year that we are in. Related to communication and partnerships, I'm sure you've seen we have reinstated our internship program here at the high school. It's a great source of pride in the district and the high school as a whole. We work very closely with local businesses in both town and the surrounding area and all over the state at this point. We have reinvigorated our partnership with the Chamber of Commerce and also with some of our clubs in town, such as the Lions Club and the Rotary Club, who are all assisting us in getting placements for our students to do both internships and cooperative work experiences. And as such, we added our internship coordinator back in the current school year. We had a person who had retired, and it actually fell right in when we were in the pandemic and we were unable to place many students out on internships, so the position became less necessary at that point, but we knew when we were able to return to school looking a lot more normal that we would want to be able to continue to offer those opportunities. So we added that position back and has been very successful. We've had more than 100 students that will have finished internships just over the course of this year by the end of the school year. Unified Sports, for those who may not know what that is for our students with disabilities to be able to play on at least some sports teams that we can have participate in league sports just like any of our non-disabled students. It's unified because it's a combination of students with disabilities and what we would call their non-disabled peers. We expanded that. We first started that program actually 2 years ago with grant funding, and then we worked that into our local budget. And we are expanding that program to include soccer this fall. So we already had basketball, and now we will be able to offer soccer also to our students with disabilities. Esports, I've heard quite a bit of questions and feedback on this. Esports standing for electronic sports. That is the new sports wave of the 21st century. So I was told as I started preparing this budget and looking into what needed to be added in related to this. This is a CIAC, which is the Connecticut Interscholastic Athletic League. That is what all of our athletes participate under in any school district, public school district in Connecticut, some private districts also. They recognize esports as a sport. It is recognized nationwide at this point, and we have a team here that has been operating with volunteers. And so in an effort to maintain that for students and to be able to officially recognize them as a part of our sports program, we have added a head coach and an assistant coach as required for them to be able to continue participating in esports. All of those together total $73,447. The internship coordinator being 61,500 of that. And the unified sports cost is $6,325. Esports is $5,622, and that's for the 2 coaches. Again, moving on to a piece funded originally by IDEA, or again, federal funding for students with disabilities. We had to move that originally grant-funded position I just mentioned to you from Unified Basketball into our local budget because we were only able to capitalize on that grant money for 1 year. And so that is costing us $6,325 in the coming school year. Major budget driver for us and the town, health insurance, a 12.7% increase this year. We've had a favorable growth fund on the pension side, however, so that has been a bit of an offset for us, actually. That is a reduction of $94,912 versus the insurance premium increase here that you see of $700. This amount is a part of this, $740,443. We were also lucky in the end, since we put this budget together, the town and the board got an updated dental number, so we have taken that back out of our increased. The rest, we have small increases, relatively small, I guess, when we're talking about $700,000. Approximately $32,000 of an increase in taxes, life insurance premiums, disability premiums, and 403 retirement contributions. As all of us are seeing at home, one of the other major drivers in this budget that has pushed the increase is related to utilities. We have a total increase we are projecting of $119,067. Of that increase, the projection is about $61,400 for electricity, an increase of about $28,375 in natural gas, and $25,507 in telecommunications, which is both internet and phone related. And water, a smaller increase, but still an increase. Projection is $3,665. Just another way of looking at the way the budget breaks out from year to year. This is the norm, I would say. Typically, as I think Mr. Boheim has said, our budget is primarily people in a school district. And so to see around an 80% portion of the budget related to salary and benefits has been standard for us. We are sometimes a bit above 80% and sometimes a bit below 80%. We are just below 80% in this case. But historically, this is what we see. Tuition, for those who may not know, when we talk about tuition, we are talking about students with special needs that may need to attend other schools than their local public schools, such as us. And once that determination is made, we as the local sending town have an obligation to pay the tuition of whatever other specialized school a student might need to attend. And we've seen an increase in that tuition as they have, other facilities have seen their costs increase also. And likewise for magnet school tuitions in the state of Connecticut, if we have students leave us to attend magnet schools, we pay tuition for them to do that. We see very few of our students leave Avon for magnet schools, however. So the majority of that increase is related to other private and sometimes public education, special education facilities. Just another way to look at the budget increase on the next slide is the overall percentage of the increase. So the overall increase, the gross being 3.71, 2.3 of that, for example, is the salaries, and 1.1 is the benefits. Again, back to the insurance, as I mentioned. So some of those you see we have decreased, where we've been able to control a bit more of the increases. Contracted services, for example, we do the best we can to keep our services in-house. We usually get the best service for our students and our staff when we are providing it ourselves for the most part. There are times when we cannot do that, I'll give you an example of officials for games, for example, are contracted services, and when those rates go up, then we must pay the increase in rates. But anything other than that that we are able to provide in district, and sometimes perhaps that means hiring additional people of our own instead of paying providers from the outside, we have done that over the years. And so we've managed to decrease this just about every year, I believe, for the past 3. Again, another way to look at the drivers, I know this is in the booklet also, but I think it's just helpful for folks who need to see the visual. 62% of the overall increase is salaries, for example. Not an increase in salaries, but of the entire increase, 62% of that is salaries. Just a few more things that I don't have in the slides to give you an example of some of the bigger picture numbers. Workers' compensation, for example, was another benefit that was decreased this year. Our cost decreased by $13,770, which was a positive impact for us. We decreased our staffing lines overall, what would have been the increase, by $334,872. That was part of what we worked very hard at, to be able to afford the other positions that we mentioned here tonight, the technology teacher, the theater arts teacher, the SRO, the unified sports coach, and the esports coach. We knew that if we had to add those straight on to the bottom line of the budget, this was not going to be a budget that we were able to bring forward and have reasonably pass. So we worked hard at those reductions and brought our staff increases, therefore, down to, it's actually 0.0035% of our overall budget increase are those staffing changes. So we are less than 0.5% increase in the changes in staff that you saw tonight. Just like to thank the Board of Education again for your assistance in putting this together, and the many hours that you spent working with us on this to be able to make the changes to bring this budget forward. Brandon and Tom, Susan, and the Board of Finance, and members of the public who we have had come and ask questions and voice concerns have been helpful for us to make sure that we are bringing back the information that you might need to be able to support the budget or to make changes in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. As I bring up the town council back to the stage, and the town manager and town clerk, I would ask if there's any other town officials that wish to comment tonight. Oh, Kathy? Is that a, nope. Is that one? We need to get that working.
I just want to take a moment to introduce the members of the Board of Finance who are here. I neglected to mention them in my haste to be brief. Charles Harvell, Vice Chair, Ellen Rattel, Board Member, Carl Gesnerian, Board Member, and I understand that Margaret Bratton is online. Thank you to all my colleagues on the board for making this a great board to be part of.
We have a microphone on each side of the room. If we're going to open up to the public for comment, so if you'd like to come up to alternating microphones and be able to ask your question or make your comment, give you a 3-minute opportunity to speak. Anybody from the public wish to address the council? It's going to be a quick meeting. That's nice. I seeing no discussion from the public. I would like to advise, are there any further comments from the council or for the town manager? Seeing none, we want to be able to adjourn this meeting to the budget referendum, which again, as a reminder, will take place on May 10th, 2023 at the Avon Senior Center in the Community Room, 635 West Avon Road, Avon, Connecticut, between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. So we move to adjourn until that time. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, nay. Thank you very much for coming tonight. Have a safe drive home.